What happens when you buy a Bugatti Veyron and still need permission to fix it? That's exactly what Matt Armstrong discovered. A fully paid, fully owned hypercar that suddenly doesn't behave like fully owned the moment restoration begins. Bugatti didn't just step back, they stepped in. And the silence they left behind is now what everyone is talking about. Videos were posted across different media platforms and the comment section exploded. And I'm starting there because the reactions to this story hit harder than most legal documents ever could. First comment: if Matt paid millions for that Bugatti, why is Matt Rimac acting like the landlord? That's not ownership, that's a hypercar rental agreement. And honestly, someone should send Matey Rimac a receipt because apparently the sale came with a clause nobody explained to the buyer. Congratulations on your purchase. We still control it though. But the second comment is where the real issue surfaces. The real scandal isn't Matt rebuilding the car, it's Bugatti proving you never truly own what you buy. They sell you the speed, they keep the system. You get the badge on the hood, they keep the keys to everything underneath it. But then the comments shifted, the jokes stopped, and people started talking about lawsuits. Imagine spending millions on a Bugatti just to ask Matty Rimac for permission to fix it. That's ownership in name only. At this point, Bugatti ownership starts sounding less like buying a car and more like subscribing to one. Cancel anytime. Except you can't cancel. You can't repair it. And you definitely can't bypass the system without approval. Another comment pushed it further. This should go to court because Bugatti is treating ownership like a lease. Matt exposing that phone call was genius. And that's the detail people keep coming back to, the phone call. Because whether Matt realized it or not, that moment may have captured something far bigger than a rebuild dispute. It may have captured evidence of how control is actually enforced. Then the final comment before things turn serious. The moment Bugatti decides who can repair your legally owned car, ownership becomes an illusion. And that's where the humor ends. Because that's no longer a joke. That's a legal argument. And fans are now pushing it toward court. The final comment before everything escalated was blunt. The moment Bugatti decides who can repair your legally owned car, ownership becomes an illusion. And that's where the tone shifts completely. No more jokes, no more sarcasm. Because at that point, it stops being internet commentary and starts sounding like a legal claim. And fans are actively pushing it in that direction. Here's why the anger is real. Matt didn't steal the vehicle. He didn't buy it through some questionable backdoor deal. He purchased it legally with full payment, the way ownership is defined in every basic system of commerce. And that definition is supposed to be simple. If you buy it, it's yours. You control it. You repair it. You decide its fate. But that principle only feels obvious until a manufacturer starts acting like the final authority over what you're allowed to do with it. Because what Bugatti appears to believe, based on their behavior throughout this entire episode, is that the sale of a vehicle does not terminate their authority over it. That even after the money changes hands, even after the title transfers, even after the car sits in Matt's garage with his name on the paperwork, Bugatti still holds something. A kind of invisible veto. A permanent hand on the shoulder reminding you that in their world, they are still the ones who decide what is allowed. And Matt Armstrong, almost accidentally, walked straight into that wall on camera. Now let us talk about the phone call, because this is where the story changes shape entirely. At some point during the rebuild saga, Matt made contact with Bugatti, and the conversation, or at least elements of it, became public. Now, regardless of exactly what was said, the significance of that moment is enormous. Because what Matt did, whether he planned it this way or not, was create a record. A documented interaction between a private owner and a manufacturer in which the manufacturer's position on independent repair became audible, visible, quotable. That kind of documentation is not nothing. In a legal context, that kind of documentation is everything. Lawyers do not build cases on vibes. They build them on receipts. And Matt may have just handed the ownership rights conversation its first real receipt from inside the hypercar world. The fans who are calling for a lawsuit are not being dramatic, they are pattern matching. They have watched this playbook before, in software, in gaming, in medical devices, in agricultural equipment. Control over that product indefinitely after the sale. The product belongs to you on paper. In practice, you are a permanent dependent of the manufacturer's ecosystem. With cars, this model has been creeping upward from consumer vehicles into the premium tier for years. But nobody expected to see it arrive this nakedly in the hypercar world. Nobody expected the face of it to be a Veyron sitting in a YouTube creator's workshop and a phone call that maybe should have stayed private. Here is what suing Bugatti would actually mean for Matt Armstrong personally. First, the public upside is real and enormous. If Matt becomes the person who takes a manufacturer to court over the right to repair a car he legally owns, he does not just win a legal case if it goes his way. He becomes a symbol. The rebuild community rallies. The right to repair movement gets a high-profile poster case with a Bugatti in the middle of it. Journalists, politicians, and lawyers who have been pushing this issue for years suddenly have a glamorous, expensive, undeniable example to point to. Matt could become the most important person in the ownership rights conversation without winning a single race or completing a single rebuild. But here is the other side, and it is serious. Bugatti is a subsidiary of Volkswagen Group. They have unlimited legal resources, long institutional memory, and zero incentive to settle in a way that weakens their control model. A lawsuit against Bugatti is not a dispute between equals. It is a YouTube creator, however successful, walking into a legal battle against one of the most powerful automotive conglomerates on Earth. That is years of litigation. That is enormous financial exposure, even for someone at Matt's level. That is his public identity locked into a legal narrative that he cannot control, for a timeline he cannot predict. And if he loses, or settles on unfavorable terms, the story does not become a cautionary tale about overreach. It becomes a weapon. Bugatti walks away with precedent. The next creator, the next independent owner, the next person who tries to push back on manufacturer control in the hypercar world looks at that outcome and decides the wall is too high. So yes, the stakes are personal. But the stakes are also much larger than Matt. Because underneath all of this is a philosophical problem that the automotive industry has been quietly avoiding for a long time, and that this whole episode is forcing into the open. What does ownership actually mean? We have a cultural assumption, almost a moral instinct, that buying something transfers control of it completely and permanently. When you buy a house, the previous owner does not retain the right to tell you what contractor you can hire. When you buy a piece of furniture, the manufacturer does not maintain veto power over who can repair it. When you buy almost anything, the transaction ends the seller's authority. That is what a sale is. That is the definition. Matt Armstrong may have paid millions for a Veyron, but what he may have actually bought without knowing it is the most expensive ownership rights case in YouTube history. Whether he sues or not, whether he wins or not, whether the rebuild ever gets finished or not, Bugatti handed him something more valuable than spare parts. They handed him a narrative that the entire world is watching, and they handed him an argument that could reshape what it means to own a hypercar, not just for him, not just for rebuild creators, but for every person who ever hands over a check in that showroom and believes that the car they just bought actually